Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura, your cake artist, and today I'm going to show you a novelty cake. The theme of this novelty cake is a dumpster fire. I thought the concept seemed pretty funny, and we can all relate to our lives in general being a dumpster fire. And why is this a novelty cake? Well, a novelty cake basically, it looks great. Sometimes you have to use firmer cakes or drier cakes to create things, but with my cakes, I always make them the same type of cake and very, very edible, delicious. It limits you a little bit on some of your design aspects if the crumb texture of the cake is too moist. But anyway, so this is a dumpster fire, and it's a little one. It's not anything too big. I just baked a square cake, cut it in half, stacked it on itself. I actually put layers in here, and I'll show you that when I cut this cake later. And I'm just frosting it with my typical buttercream, my basic buttercream. The link will be in this video as well. And then I'm using some leftover blue that I used for my friend's birthday party cake. I didn't want it to go to waste, and you're not going to see it because it's going to be covered in modeling chocolate. So I went ahead and used that, and it kind of helped me fill in the gaps. I also didn't trim this cake to look perfect. Sure, you could go in and make some dimensions and be really precise with it, and some of my most favorite cake decorators are very precise. But this, I just wanted it to be kind of rough. It doesn't have to look pretty. It's going to be a dented up dumpster when it's all said and done. So right here, I'm just covering in all my spots, making sure that there's no huge gaps in my cake. And then it's also going to protect the cake. So if you were making this for a friend, a family, a client, you're going to want the cake to withstand hours of decorating and keep it from getting dried out. And really the only way to do that is give it a nice thick layer of buttercream. In between each one of these layers, you'll stick it in the fridge, let it firm up. You just want to have your canvas nice and firm. It makes things a lot easier. And, it's always a learning adventure. No matter what cake I do, it's always a first time. There's very few cakes that I've made 2 times in a row for birthday parties and such. So it's you kind of just have to go by the seat of your pants sometimes. Some people are probably better at organizing their cake designs and things like that. So I'm just going to keep on going here, and we've got it sped up. I guess I can also talk about the different products I use. So I told you about my basic buttercream. I use not a doctored box mix, but I use a homemade vanilla. And right here is a modeling chocolate. A lot of people will use fondant, but I'm using modeling chocolate. And I purposely mixed this, my ratios of corn syrup, so that it wouldn't be in my chocolate, so it wouldn't be perfectly cohesive. I'm going to have little chunks in there, little crumbs, and I did that because I don't think a dumpster is probably very smooth. So you'll see those little pieces there, and I'll highlight it here for you and pause. So you'll see that. That is how you know that your modeling chocolate did not necessarily come together all the way when you first made it. And I will also have a link to a recipe for modeling chocolate. That is not my own recipe, by the way, but it'll be in the description below. And it's a tricky one, but it tastes a lot better than fondant. It's made from those little chocolate wafers that you use for cake pops. You can get fancier chocolate instead of the wafer kind, but for some reason in my area, it's kind of hard to find the really nice chocolate. You can order them online, and then some people actually buy this modeling chocolate already made. It's kind of pricey for me. I'm a little cheap, so I make my own, and it winds up being a lot more thin. Right there, I'm just trying to get it all thinned out. You're going to see those little air bubbles. We poke those with something sharp and just run over them. Now, if this was something that you wanted to be nice and smooth and beautiful, you're going to be very careful with how you poke those bubbles. And I'm making a panel. So when you cover a cake with fondant or modeling chocolate, there's a couple different ways. You can cover it in one giant piece or cover it in panels. And since this was like a rectangle, I figured panels would be appropriate. Now, it looks ugly at this point. And when I watch Bob Ross art videos, I'm like, oh no, Bob, what are you doing? It looks terrible. And at the end, he always gets his painting the way he wants it. So you have to trust the process. And again, if this was something like a wedding cake or that needed to be very symmetrical in a certain, shape, you're going to be a little bit more picky about how you cover it, of course. But right now, I'm just concerned about getting it covered. I got to work in a couple hours, so I'm just trying to do the best I can to get it done. I'm smoothing it. This is a real typical fondant smoother that I'm using. You can find it in any arts and crafts stores like Michael's, Hobby Lobby. And so far it's lasted the test of time with me. I have lots of really nice professional tools too, but some of them, there's nothing wrong with them, so I don't need to buy a new one. Right here, I'm just trimming off the inside because I'm going to cover this inside piece with its own piece of modeling chocolate. That gives me a little bit more artistic freedom to squish it in there, break it apart a little bit, and it doesn't affect my outside either. You can kind of tell my cake is getting too much room temperature, so I'm going to have to stick it back in the fridge to prevent me from really messing it up too bad. But I'm just getting those edges the way I like them, and trying not to worry too much about it. Of course, trusting the process. These little gray tools are my fave. I also have these. These are clay tools. Now, this is not being given to anyone. I don't have a client that's asking for it. So I'm not too concerned about what kind of tools I use on it. And I'm betting that any professional baker would tell me not to use this type of metal on my cakes. It's probably not considered food safe. So when you buy decorating tools, they will tell you that they're food safe. Other than that, I mean, the science behind it is, it's sharper, and that's why I wanted it. And some of my other tools aren't nearly as sharp to give me that rough look to the dumpster that I want. And I'm just going over all my edges. I'm putting some scrapes on the sides, like it's been banged up against a building or something, and just trying to make it look as textured as possible. And there are so many textured tools out there. I could spend all day. In fact, I will post a video on my favorite tools, the tools I wish I had, and just some of the basic like beginner tools that a lot of people buy, the Wilton stuff. It's good stuff, but it falls apart. And so you have to be prepared for that as well. And right here, I'm just making those divots in the dumpster that you sometimes see. And I'm just trying to and I make my modeling chocolate pretty thick. If you make it too thin, then you're limiting yourself on the depth of these cakes. Here's one of my favorite tools, and it is food safe. And these just have a ball end, like a rough triangular edge, and a scoop. And that's just going to help me clear it out. Sometimes I don't know which tool I'm going to like the best until I start working on a cake. And I'll start to use a tool and be like, oh, I'm not accomplishing the goal that I need to, like digging out this long crevice on the dumpster. So I had to change my mind a couple times, and then I had to make it dimensional, like almost like a rectangle on the inside of the spot. So I needed a couple different tools here, and I am so sorry. This is the cinematic view that I took with my iPhone, and I'm just not digging it. I know I'm a beginner, but I think I do too much moving and close-up stuff for it to work. Here's another one of my clay tools. I never did anything substantial with clay. I love it though, but so I have a lot of stuff, but nothing to show for it. So I'm just cleaning that up, just getting all those edges the way I want them. And this took surprisingly a long time, and I'm a little out of practice. I don't make cakes very often anymore, but I just wanted to get it to look as much like a dumpster as possible. And at first I thought, well, let's make it look like a cartoon dumpster. And that's kind of a trend right now that I've seen, where the markings on the edges are like a skipped looking line, that kind of stuff. But the farther I got into it, the more I realized I was going to have to make it look more realistic than cartoonish. So there was a couple things I wish I would have done differently. There's always something. If you're just starting out, or if you've been doing cakes for a long time, you know this. There's always something you don't like about your cake. And my coworkers are always like, you're too hard on yourself. Give yourself a break. It looks amazing. But if someone paid me to do 2 cakes the same in a row, then I would take those lessons and kind of reapply them, I guess. So So this part is lengthy, but it gives me enough time to start talking about modeling chocolate. The reason I enjoy using modeling chocolate is because fondant, as pliable and easy to use as it is, it dries out, it cracks, it starts looking crepey, like, you know, crepe skin type of look. So you're almost a little bit more limited. And I started watching Natalie Surfside. She is fantastic. I hope I just didn't screw her name up. But she's an artist, and she started making cakes. She had a show for a while, probably still does. And her cakes, she has started doing, or she's basically one of the main people that did hyper realistic cakes in the very beginning. So when you see all those shows about is it real cake or not, like, she should be getting some serious credit, because she started doing that a long time ago. So if you get a chance, she's on my favorite channels on my YouTube channel, so check it out. She's amazing. But anyway, so a lot of that is the modeling chocolate ideas are from her, because she can sculpt faces and animals, you name it. She's done amazing stuff with modeling chocolate that you can't do with fondant. And then you also get people who say, I don't like fondant. So this is an alternative to that. And you might change someone's mind about these types of cakes if they try modeling chocolate instead. And you can flavor it, you can color it, you can buy pre-colored chocolate. So it's got a lot of uses. And so I'm just continuing to go around this cake. I was worried about the lid. I just don't, a trash lid is not, you know, easy to do, but you can see how I have it kind of bent at an angle. I could have probably added more to the top of it, but I figured since you weren't going to see the top of it, I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on it. And then I also took a texturing tool and went down the back of the lid, and you'll be able to see that in just a moment. And it kind of gave it that plastic texture. So my goal was, how do I differentiate between the metal and the plastic? And that, I mean, I know other people do it much better than me, but it kind of took me a hot minute to get a good idea of what I was doing. So you see I have the top on there now. I had to skip around, and I moistened the top. So now I'm painting it. So something happened to my camera, and it shut off halfway through my painting. All I did was add a little bit of powder to this. So I did black on all the lines on the inside. I put little handles on the side with some more modeling chocolate. And of course, as soon as I got the black on there, I was like, oh, this is looking terrible. But trust the process. As soon as I started putting this powdered green on that you see, it really started coming together. And I put little mini trash bags in there. Nothing is to size on this cake. So when you see the trash later, I am fully aware that my banana is way too big for the ratio of the rest of the trash in there. So this powder, it's powdered food coloring, and it's fantastic for flower decorations, all kinds of things. It is edible. It's not delicious, but it is edible. And you can create a lot of texture with the powdered food colorings. So then here I've gotten done with all the powder. I put a bunch of trash in the dumpster, and then I made some fire with Isomalt. Isomalt is a little tricky, but it's basically like hard candy, and it has a lot of uses as well. I will eventually upload a video of how to work with Isomalt. I made a margarita glass one time for my coworker. So I've done a couple things with Isomalt, but you can make real candy and that kind of thing with it. I tried to twist it into fire shapes. I colored it with a little food coloring, and again, I wasn't trying to make anything look pretty. The only problem I had was the longer that this Isomalt sits, it starts becoming opaque. You could do a couple things. You can reheat it, like with a little mini torch that you would use for creme brulee, or you can color it with some, like paint over it with some gel. So that's what I wound up doing. I don't have any CO2 cartridges for my little burner thing. So I make a lot of messes, of course, you can see here. You can transfer this onto a piece of parchment paper, and it makes the cleanup a whole lot easier before you show everyone your cake. So there it is. The fire is not nearly as translucent as I wanted it, but nonetheless, you see my little banana there on the left-hand side, and I got some other garbage that's spilling over the side. My next video, I'll probably spend more time trying to get better camera angle. Easier said than done, right? Well, here it is, guys, the dumpster fire. I used some caramel and drizzled it down the edges of the dumpster. Got a banana in there, a toilet seat. Nothing's to scale, so give me a break. And my trash bags look terrible. And I made these cute little waste management signs out of edible paper. It's sugar paper. You can buy that online and cut it to size. I could have made it look a little dirty too, but I didn't do that. So here it is, my dumpster fire. I hope your day and your week is not a dumpster fire. And I'm going to cut this cake open to show you what the inside looks like. It's been in the fridge for 2 weeks, so this is much more dry than any cake that I would give to a friend or sell to a client. And it's really hard because it just came out of the fridge. But you can see how firm that modeling chocolate is. I hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe, guys. Have a great night.